In May of 2026, total RV shipments in America fell 18.7% year over year. Towable RVs, travel trailers, and fifth wheels dropped 21.3%. Motorhomes went up 2.2%. That wasn't a one-month fluke either. Motorhome shipments rose 13% in April and 9.3% in March, in the middle of the worst RV downturn since the pandemic correction. So let me square the title with you before we go one step further, because I'm not going to sell you something the numbers don't support. Nobody is walking away from buying motorhomes. New motorhome sales are the single healthiest corner of this entire industry right now. If the story were Americans stopped wanting motorhomes, the shipment data would say so, and it says the reverse. The exodus is happening on the other side of the ledger. It's the people who already own one. And the reason it's happening isn't that they stopped loving it, and it isn't a credit crunch, and it isn't fuel prices, though every one of those gets blamed. It's an arithmetic problem baked into the product itself, and it stays invisible for about 5 years before it surfaces all at once. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why a motorhome behaves differently from every other vehicle you've owned, why mileage barely matters on one, and why the sell decision usually arrives before the owner expects it. Stay for the usage number, because that one figure explains more than everything else combined. Here's the foundation, and without it, nothing else makes sense. A motorhome is two vehicles bolted together, and they age at completely different speeds. The first vehicle is the chassis. Engine, transmission, frame, axles, brakes. On a Class A diesel pusher with a Cummins or a Caterpillar under it, that machinery routinely runs 200,000 to 300,000 miles or more with proper maintenance. A Class A gas coach on a Ford or Chevy chassis will typically go 100,000 to 200,000. A Class C on a Sprinter platform can pass 250,000. By any normal standard, that's a vehicle you cannot wear out in a lifetime of recreational use. Now, if you're thinking about buying an RV, or you're already stuck in one, I put together something called the RV Buyer's Blueprint. Real ownership costs, how to read the financing paper before you sign it, the inspection checklist that catches water damage, and how to get out if you're upside down. The link is below this video. Alright, let's keep going. The second vehicle is the house. Roof membrane, sidewall lamination, window and slide seals, water heater, furnace, refrigerator, air conditioners, slide mechanisms, holding tanks, plumbing. And here's the thing that separates a motorhome from everything else in your driveway. The house wears out on a calendar, not on an odometer. Sealant cures and shrinks whether you drive or not. UV degrades a roof membrane sitting in a storage lot exactly as fast as it does on the highway. Rubber seals take a set and stop sealing. Appliances that sit unused seize. Tires age out and have to be replaced on date code long before the tread is gone. Industry commentary on motorhome longevity puts it plainly. The living quarters need more maintenance than the drivetrain, with roofs, seals, and appliances requiring attention well before the engine gives out. So, you own one asset with a 250,000-mile life expectancy and another asset with roughly a 10 to 15-year practical life, and they're welded to each other. You cannot sell one and keep the other. When the house reaches end of life, the drivetrain underneath it, which may have 60,000 easy miles on it, goes to the same place. And this is why the gas versus diesel argument matters more than people think, though not for the reason it usually gets argued. The debate is normally about power and ride quality. The real consequence is mismatch. Put a house with a 15-year life on a diesel chassis rated for 300,000 miles, and you've built something where the expensive half will still be healthy when the cheap half is finished. Winnebago's own published pricing illustrates the gap in what that costs up front. An Inspire 34AE starting around $379,000 against an Adventurer 35F at roughly $258,000. a difference of about $122,000. You are paying 6 figures extra for drivetrain longevity you will almost certainly never reach on a coach whose retirement date is set by its roof. Now, here's the number I told you to wait for, and it's the one that turns this from a design curiosity into a financial event. Class A owners use their motorhome an average of 27 days per year. That's from the Go RVing owner demographic profile. Class C owners average 21 days. Across all RV types, the median has climbed to about 30 days annually, up from 20 in the prior study, so usage is actually rising, and it's still under a month. Run that against what I just told you. 27 days of use. 338 days of aging. The house on top of that chassis is decaying almost continuously and being used almost never, which means the depreciation you're paying isn't being purchased with experience. It's being purchased with time, and time passes whether the coach moves or not. That's the whole trap, and now the money makes sense. Motorhomes shed 20 to 30% of their value in the first 12 months. A $120,000 diesel pusher is worth somewhere around $85,000 to $96,000 after a year in pristine condition. Class A gas coaches depreciate fastest of all, commonly 30 to 35% in year one, because operating costs are high and the used market strongly prefers diesel. By 4 years, depreciation runs around 30% of original price. By 5 years, a motorhome has typically lost about 40%. And notice what mileage does, or rather doesn't do. Valuation guidance is that motorhome values track age far more than odometer reading. High mileage, north of 50,000, can knock 20 to 40% off. But low mileage, under 15,000, mostly just helps you hold what age has already taken. You cannot preserve a motorhome's value by not driving it. Not driving it is what most owners already do. Then there's the cohort problem, and this is where 2026 specifically gets ugly. The luxury motorhome market ran hot from 2020 through 2022. Pandemic buyers with money moved into high-end diesel coaches and drove values sharply up. Wholesale analysis of that segment now indicates units that cleared around $250,000 in 2021 are moving at roughly $170,000 to $190,000 in 2026. A decline amplified well past normal depreciation curves by the luxury buyer pulling back. The same analysis notes the floor on that category is not yet clearly established, and that dealers holding high-end diesels are carrying real cost pressure. Read that carefully, because it's the specific mechanism behind the title. That's a 6-figure loss on a single unit, concentrated on people who bought at the peak 5 years ago, which is exactly the point in the ownership curve where the house starts needing money. And the running costs don't sit still while that happens. Total cost of ownership on a $400,000 diesel pusher can exceed $100,000 a year once you stack financing interest, insurance, fuel at 7 to 12 miles per gallon, campground fees, maintenance, storage, and depreciation. Even well down market, the constellation of costs around the coach frequently equals or exceeds the purchase price over the life of ownership. Now here's the reveal, and it's the piece almost nobody connects. Look at who owns these things. According to the Go RVing profile, 66% of Class A motorhome owners are 55 or older. 42% are retired. For Class C, it's 64% over 55, also 42% retired. 3/4 of Class A owners have no children living at home. Now put that next to the maintenance reality. A motorhome requires an owner who can get on a 14-foot roof twice a year to inspect and reseal it, who can crawl underneath, who can drive a 40-foot vehicle, back it into a site, and manage a tow vehicle behind it. Those are physical capabilities, and they have an expiration date. And notice that none of them are financial. A person can be perfectly solvent, fully retired, with the coach paid off, and still reach the point where the roof inspection is not happening anymore. At which point deferred maintenance starts compounding on a house that was already aging on a calendar. And deferred maintenance on a motorhome roof is the beginning of the failure that ends units. So the exodus you are hearing about is not primarily financial distress. It is largely demographic. A cohort that bought heavily between 2020 and 2022, skewing 55 and older, is now 5 to 6 years into ownership, which is simultaneously the point where the house starts demanding real money, the point where depreciation has taken 40%, and the point where the owner is 5 or 6 years older than when they signed. Those three curves intersect, and they intersect on schedule for everybody, which is why this looks like a wave rather than a series of individual decisions. That is the shocking truth in the title, and it is not a scandal. It is a calendar. Which brings us to why walking away is harder than it should be. The first door is the private sale, and the motorhome market is structurally worse at this than the towable market. The buyer pool is narrower. A trailer buyer needs a truck, but a motorhome buyer needs to be comfortable driving a bus. Dealer inventory data shows larger RVs, Class A and Class C, sit substantially longer than travel trailers, with new RV inventory aging as high as 165 days in a single month. If a dealer with a lot, a website, and a finance department needs 5 months to move one, a private seller with a Facebook listing should plan accordingly. The second door is trade or consignment, and here the two vehicles problem becomes a pricing problem. An appraiser is looking at the house, not the drivetrain. Your 40,000-mile Cummins is nearly irrelevant to the number you get. What sets the number is roof condition, sealant, delamination, soft floors, and whether the slides work, which is to say, the part that's been aging for 6 years while you used it 27 days a summer. The third door is keeping it and not using it, and this is the one most people actually take, at least for a while. It's also the worst of the three, because storage, insurance, registration, and depreciation all continue at full rate while use goes to zero. A coach that isn't moving is still costing money and still aging. That's how a motorhome becomes an expense with no offsetting benefit, and that is usually the state people are in immediately before they finally sell. So follow the incentives, because none of this is anybody's conspiracy. The manufacturer's product is a chassis with a 15-year house on it, and there is no commercial reason to build the house to chassis standards. It would raise the price into a bracket where the coach doesn't sell, and the buyer at the show is comparing floor plans and finishes, not sealant specifications and membrane warranties. The lender's product is a term long enough to make a $250,000 purchase feel manageable, which in this market means paper commonly running 120 to 240 months, 20-year notes on a house with a 15-year practical life. The loan is engineered to outlive the thing it's secured against, and the dealer's product is the trade cycle. There's no business in a customer who buys one coach and keeps it 18 years. There's a great deal of business in a customer who comes back at year 6, underwater, and rolls the shortfall into something newer. Nobody in that chain is lying to anyone. Every one of them is optimizing for the number in front of them. And the sum of those optimizations is an owner in year 6, with a coach worth 40% of what they paid, a roof that needs work, and a body that likes ladders less than it used to. So here's what to actually take from this. If you own one now, the calendar is the enemy, not the odometer. So use it more, not less. 27 days a year is the worst possible ratio of cost to benefit. The depreciation is already happening. Driving it is the only thing that converts that loss into something you got. Stay on the roof. An annual inspection and reseal is the single highest return maintenance item on a motorhome, because it's the one that prevents the failure that ends units. Water into the walls and floor. Delamination and structural water damage run 5 figures and are frequently classified by insurers as maintenance rather than sudden damage, which means you pay. If you're buying, buy age, not mileage. A 6 to 8 year old coach with documented single owner history has already surrendered the steep part of the curve, and the drivetrain underneath is barely started. That's the strongest value position in this entire market, and right now there's a lot of it for sale from people who need out. And be honest about the latter. Not the payment, the ladder, the driving, and the backing. Those are the capabilities the product actually requires, and they're the ones that determine how long you'll own it. Everybody plans for the financing. Almost nobody plans for the physical part, and the physical part is what's driving the numbers you clicked on. Which brings it back to where we started. Motorhome shipments are up in a market that's down double digits, because the people buying them are the ones who can pay cash and don't need a lender's permission. And motorhome owners are leaving in numbers at the same time for reasons that have nothing to do with the economy, because a coach ages on a calendar, gets used less than a month a year, and requires an owner who can still get on the roof.